the Zionist regime, since its inception, has been committing these types of atrocities and speak about it. And that's why they vote Democrat or third party. Now, there is a group that is just have this impunity against Israelis, and they glorify the Zionist regime. They glorify the Zionist army. They say everything they do is necessary. And the factor that goes against the pro-Palestinian issues is the control of the Zionists over the main media or mainstream channels.
The American Democratic nominee for President Kamala Harris is achieving significant points against the Republican nominee Donald Trump, and she picked her running mate, Mr. Tim Walz. Kamala Harris has many statements concerning the Palestinians' rights and the Palestinian suffering in Gaza, and her last statement was that she can't keep silent on the suffering of the Palestinians. Now, is she giving these statements in order to win the hearts and the minds of the pro-Palestinians' rights in the United States, or she is serious about that? To answer this question, we have with us our guest, Palestinian American attorney and activist, Mr. Ramy Aqel. You're welcome to the program, Mr. Ramy.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Mr. Ramy, my first question to you before we talk about Kamala Harris and her statements vis-a-vis the Palestinians' rights and the Palestinian suffering. The current American administration, Biden's administration, provided unconditional support to the Israeli occupation government in its genocidal campaign against the Palestinians, and they did not take any step on the ground in order to stop this genocidal campaign that started 10 months ago, killing and injuring about 200,000 Palestinians. How do you describe this position?
Well, it's, as Palestinian Americans and Arab Americans and Muslim Americans, we are very familiar with this landscape and these politicians' positions on the Palestinian American issue or the Israeli Palestinian conflict. Many of these politicians are brought to power by the lobbies and by the Zionist powers that are running behind the scenes, making sure that they are winning their positions. So we are not surprised. Even presidents like President Barack Obama, while a lot of the policies that he issued made sense, at the same token, he was the one who gave the most military weapon to Israel, support to Israel. So this is something we're very familiar with. What was more shocking is that the degree of or the severity of the genocide that was going on to the Palestinians since October 7th in Gaza, and the amount of silence and even support that was given by President Biden, who, by the way, identifies as a Zionist. So when somebody like him identifies as a Zionist, was brought to power throughout his career by sympathizing with Zionists all throughout his political career, it was no surprise that he continued to support them. And it's very unfortunate because we, as Palestinian American community, we are very active in the political realm here in the United States. We even have our community members running for office from the East Coast to the West Coast. We also have the House of Representatives, Ms. Rashida Tlaib. So we are active. We are voting. The issue is who do we vote for? And,
Yes.
was Biden's strategy and answer to post-October 7th attacks that obviously took the community aback, and they said, you know what, maybe we shouldn't affiliate with the Democratic Party anymore because of their support for Israel.
Yeah, and this leads me to the question now about Kamala Harris. And we don't want to forget that she is vice president now, and she did not do anything to stop the Israeli genocide against the Palestinians. Now, during her electoral campaign, she says that she is not going to be silent on the suffering of the Palestinians. So is it to win your hearts and minds, or you think that she is serious and she will tell the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, stop your genocidal acts against the Palestinian children and women?
Well, we are very optimistic, a little bit more optimistic than we are with Biden. We have to remember that she was a vice president, and the vice president really a lot of most of the time just follows the instructions or the policies of the president. But obviously, having Kamala Harris as the nominee now changes things. She is being pressured by pro-Palestinian activists, by the Arab American community and the Palestinian American community. But at the same time, the overall strategy towards the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, we don't think will change. So it's going to be a similar situation maybe to Obama's era, where it's going to be support for Israel as an institution, but maybe a disagreement with Netanyahu, right? So that could make some changes, but I think the overall policies will remain the same. The military support, the impunity, all of these policies will probably most likely remain the same. But yes, we do have now a nominee that is a little bit more balanced, like they say.
Mhm.
But yeah, the overall policies, I think, will be biased toward Israel.
Yeah, you know that she was expected to have her running mate as Mr. Shapiro, but he is a pro-Zionist, and this is why she might refrain from that, and she pegged Tim Walz. If you tell us about the character of Tim Walz and what do you think of his policy when it comes to Israel-Palestine?
Absolutely, yeah. So making the decision as to the vice president was obviously very strategic. Kamala Harris and the Democratic Party wanted to make sure that they still rescue whatever they can from the Arab American vote, especially in states like Michigan. And at the same time, also make sure to appease the far left as well, who are opposed to the Israeli genocide. So choosing Shapiro would have been very tricky and challenging for her campaign, because then she would exclude these groups. He himself was, his identity as Jewish isn't really what's at question, but really his support for Israel and his connection to the IDF. For Kamala Harris and the Democratic Party, thought that this would harm her chances with the Arab American community, the Palestinian American community, and the far left, who may end up or not voting at all, or voting for third party candidates such as Jill Stein, who is actually pro-Palestine.
Yeah.
And for Walz himself was a good choice, obviously, because he, I don't believe that he identifies as Zionist. He himself is not Jewish, which again, being Jewish isn't really the issue. Um, but he is pro-Israel, and he's a classic politician who's pro-Israel, but also balanced, I believe, from what I heard, what I read about him. So if we have a balanced president and a balanced vice president, I think that will keep their chances of winning the majority of the Democratic and independent votes in the country.
Yeah, and now, Mr. Ramy, you said that we should not expect an overall change in the American policy if Harris wins the election, as the military support for Israel would continue. I don't think that they are going to ask Israel to dismantle its settlements and declare the Palestinian state as part of the two-state solution. So why don't the pro-Palestinians' rights, why don't the Palestinians, the Arabs, the Muslims in the United States go to the third party, like the Green Party, for example, not the Democratic Party, not the Republican Party?
Well, after October 7th, actually, a lot of when I speak to Palestinian Americans, the majority of them, including me, are in as status quo. We're voting for Jill Stein. The issue is history has taught us that voting for third-party candidates may actually hinder chances of our community being counted in the process. So if the Democratic Party now is taking a lot of initiatives to kind of appease the Palestinian American community and the far left and the Arab American community and the Muslim American communities, if they see a pattern of these communities not voting for them and rather voting for third-party candidates, then they may end up falling in the hands of the Zionist lobbies like AIPAC and others much more easily. So if you just abandon the Democratic Party, then you actually, have you losing the chance of being counted in and having a weight in the Democratic Party, but also you risk the chance of having the Republican nominee win the election. And in that situation, our experience with the Republican presidents, the Middle East in general, with George W. Bush and Trump, was a lot more negative, was a lot more catastrophic.
Yeah.
So when you choose to vote third party, you're taking a big risk. So one of the good examples and what history taught us is during the 2000 election between Al Gore and George W. Bush, the far left progressives and Arab American communities voted for a third party candidate, Ralph Nader. So during that election, there was a close call between Al Gore and George Bush, and they even had to go to court in Florida for it to be finalized. So had all of these votes gone to the Democratic candidate at the time, Al Gore, we would not have George W. Bush as president, who destabilized the Middle East, who made Israel a lot more stronger and gave it a lot more impunity. So we really have to take a different analysis and assess our position. So like they said, you're voting for the lesser of the two evils. Everyone here, not just the Arab American community or Palestinian American community, but everyone else does vote for what they call the lesser of two evils.
Yeah.
You'll never find the right candidate for you who you would agree on every single policy.
Yeah. So choosing the lesser of the two evils could be the only option that the pro-Palestinian rights have. But don't you think that the failure of Cori Bush in Missouri, her failing of the primary, Jamal Bowman failing the primary in New York because of the AIPAC support for their competitors, don't you think that the Zionist lobby money for Trump may overcome Harris, and we may see Trump once again in the White House? How do you see things?
No, I mean, absolutely. So AIPAC's money and Zionist lobby's money is a big factor in the U.S. elections. And this was after a case called Citizens United, where corporations and lobbies were given the full freedom to contribute to campaigns, to political campaigns. And yes, they're a huge factor in this election. Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman lost because of the money. It was literally just money, millions of dollars just dumped into the campaigns, and mobilized the supporters of AIPAC and Israel to go out and vote, and even moderates. And, they lost the election. So this is literally both of these squad members, as they call them, that lost, was literally just money coming into the election and making a big effect.
Yeah.
Now, sorry to interrupt, but with the general elections or with the presidential elections, AIPAC is going to be contributing to both, right? So Kamala Harris isn't suddenly going to say, I don't want AIPAC money, I don't want Zionist money, which is why she's taken these positions. They have taken these positions historically to continue to be viable in their races. So they're not going to suddenly not take any money. It may actually help them. So AIPAC is really playing the game here of just being part of whoever wins and being influential. So every politician has their AIPAC, they call it AIPAC guy. Mm-hmm. So, I don't think that she will not take any, Zionist sponsored money. She will, and she may still make balanced choices.
Yeah. And a relevant question, to what extent do you think the failure of the progressive Democrats of the primaries like Cori and Bowman, to what extent this would affect the momentum of the Democratic Party member support for the Palestinian rights and for their criticism of the Israeli genocide against the Palestinians?
Well, it will have an effect, of course. This is what money does in politics. And yes, if politicians now, we have even these members, Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman and Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, even being in Congress or having won at a certain point, that's already considered progress. That's already considered a win. Politicians like them were not visible before. They were not in positions before. They would always be struck down. So even having them in the first place is progress. It is a win. And now it's just a learning experience. Now we know that voters will be almost, I'm not going to say it directly, but or I can say it this way, maybe we'll say that elections can be bought. So now
Yeah.
this is a learning experience for progressives, for pro-Palestine activists and voters to say, okay, so money could come in and influence the elections in this district. Let's make sure that doesn't happen again.
Yeah. And my final question to you, as you see, Mr. Ramy, the Israeli occupation government is escalating its aggression against the Palestinians, whether in Gaza or the West Bank. Just yesterday, they killed about 13 Palestinians in Jenin and the West Bank in general. And we are talking about 200,000 Palestinians killed and injured in Gaza. Now, the Israeli occupation forces are ordering the Palestinians of Gaza City to evacuate, to bombard it once again. If you tell us about the momentum of the demonstrations and the rallies organized in the United States against this Israeli genocidal policy, is it going to be on rise or going down?
And unfortunately, it's going to be hard to tell. But right now, the way the momentum is that Israel is giving full impunity. They're obviously, because of the hostage situation, they're using that as a excuse to go in and just kill as many innocent people and hit everything against the wall and do whatever they want. But it's hard to tell right now what the momentum will be. The progressives and the far left and the pro-Palestinian groups obviously have to reevaluate their position. A lot of changes have happened in the past couple of weeks. While everyone voted Democrat just because there were lesser of the two evils, the genocide happened, and then people changed their mind and said, "I'm gonna either not vote or go third party." Right now, with the assassination of Ismail Haniya, and potential all-out war between Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas, and Houthis and Israel, that changes the policies a little bit because now they feel like there's going to be an imminent war. And then also, Biden dropping out and having Kamala as the nominee also changes things. So there's definitely going to be a reevaluation and reassessment of positions at this time.
Yeah, and one more point. When it comes to human rights, Mr. Ramy, to what extent the American citizens get affected, especially when they watch videos like the video published today, Israeli occupation soldiers raping Palestinian prisoner in the Negev prison. To what extent these immoral acts by the Israeli forces affect the American citizens?
Well, it's like they say, group by group. So obviously, the progressives, the rational, the pro-Palestine groups and citizens obviously see that, and they know that even the Zionist regime, since its inception, has been committing these types of atrocities and speak about it, and that's why they vote Democrat or third party. Now, there is a group that is just have this impunity against Israelis, and they glorify the Zionist regime. They glorify the Zionist army. They say everything they do is necessary. And the factor that goes against the pro-Palestinian issues is the control of the Zionists over the main media or mainstream channels. So if you look at the New York Times and CNN and Fox News, these are the three major news outlets in the U.S. And the amount of news throughout October 7, I've been reading and I've been reviewing. This is like a lot of these channels are almost like they should call themselves the IDF.com or the IDF news media. That they are very, very influenced by Zionist media principles. And so all these atrocities that you and I are seeing and talking about, they do not get covered adequately in the US. So the only way I myself could view these things is throughout social media outlets, or some videos getting sent, or even Israeli channels like Channel 12 who issued this video.
Yeah.
U.S. media is such held hostage to the Zionist lobbies that all of these incidents don't get covered. Barely, CNN is the channel that may sometimes talk about like Smotrich statements that are so extreme. Just once in a while, they'll say something just for them to stay balanced that they're not always pro-Israel, but they don't cover the main media outlets don't cover these issues. They only cover like the hostage situation or October 7th itself and any other incident that's where Israelis are being harmed. But when Palestinians are being persecuted, it does not get covered. Some news media outlets and programs now are talking about it, but they're not popular. That's the issue, is that they're not mainstream. So if you want this story to get covered, CNN, New York Times, Fox News would have to actually come together and be more balanced in these issues. There was a recent episode on HBO by John Oliver, and he discussed the situation with the West Bank at extent and how tragic the situation is over there in the West Bank due to settlement, especially in Hebron. And that's one, excuse me, that's only one place where it's being covered.
Mhm, mhm. So, Mr. Ramy, we strongly believe that as long as we have people like you and the Palestinian American community, the Palestinian voice will be heard by all the world, not only by the American people. It has been a great pleasure having you on our program, Ramy Aqel, Palestinian American attorney and activist. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ramy. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. And from you, Sama Nazal. Have a nice time.